Okay, let me just start by saying this is not a video explaining what compound interest is. I think that most people watching my videos are familiar with compound interest. You don't need another reminder to max out your Roth IRA. What we're talking about today is compounding as a mental model. The teachings on compounding are often limited to finance, but compounding is a tool for all facets of life. And that mismatch is exactly why so many of us chronically underestimate compounding and the role it plays in our knowledge, our skills, our relationships, and the rest of our long-term games we play in life. So in this video, we're going to learn about what Naval Ravikant calls playing iterated games. We're going to learn about how compounding creates unpredictable options. And lastly, we're going to talk about the late Charlie Munger's rule of non-interruption and how all this relates to compounding. So this video is not about how to get rich in the stock market, although it could definitely help. This video is more about how to get extraordinary results in the game of life by finally understanding a force that most of us are only applying to our 401ks. Let's get started. Compounding is a versatile mental model that describes how small, consistent efforts multiply over time to create massive results. It is often compared to a snowball rolling downhill, where the ball grows larger from the fresh snow it picks up along the way. As it picks up fresh snow, the surface area of the snowball increases, allowing it to pick up even more fresh snow with each revolution of the snowball. This process is kind of magical because it follows a power law, meaning that as time goes on, the growth becomes faster and faster. And even a very small starting amount can turn into something huge if it's left alone for a long enough time. Now, to understand compounding is to acknowledge a flaw in our undeveloped monkey brains. Our brains are naturally evolved to think in linear terms, where we expect progress to happen at a steady, even pace. Because of this, many people underestimate how powerful compounding really is. Now, a famous example used to show this involves a choice between receiving $1,000 a day for a month or a single penny that doubles every day for 30 days. While the first choice seems better at first because it adds up to 30 grand, the doubling penny eventually turns into $5.3 million because of compounding and exponential growth. A critical principle that we've got to get our heads around is that the rewards of compounding are backloaded, meaning that most of the benefits arrive at the end of the cycle. In the beginning, progress is so slow that it feels like nothing's happening at all. This leads to something called the valley of disappointment, where people give up because they don't see the immediate results of their hard work. In order to make compounding work, a person must be willing to reinvest their returns rather than spending them. If a sum of money earns interest, that interest must be added back to the original amount so that it can also earn interest in the next round. Now, the same rule applies to knowledge. If you stop challenging yourself and learning, the compounding stops and you become stale. For example, not every kid who had a lemonade stand growing up ends up running a national juice chain. Humans have evolved to become pretty good at using past experiences to guide future decisions. So a lot of knowledge compounding happens naturally over time, especially when we're young. But sometimes we stop reinvesting that interest because we stop challenging ourselves. We stop compounding our learning, and the next 20 years of living start to look like the same year repeated 20 times. To gain insight and eventually wisdom, we need to reinvest our knowledge and let it compound. One of the most important concepts to understand in terms of compounding is this idea of playing iterated games. Most situations in life, whether in business, friendships, or your career, are not one-time events. They are iterated, meaning that you play the same game with the same people over and over again. The main reason iterated games are so powerful is that they allow you to earn compound interest in your relationships. Just as money grows faster the longer it's left in the bank, a relationship becomes more valuable the longer it lasts. Let me explain. When you deal with the same people for 10, 20, 30 years, a seamless web of trust begins to form. Well-deserved trust. This trust acts as a sort of lubricant. If you're doing business with someone for the first time, you don't trust them, which means you have to spend your time and energy and money on contracts and the other due diligence that you would need to do in order to protect yourself when engaging with them. But when you've worked with someone for 20 years, you can do business on a handshake because you both know by now that the other person is reliable. It's frictionless. Naval Ravikant stresses this idea of playing long-term games with long-term people. Playing iterated long-term games changes the way you treat people. If you know that the other person is going to be around for a long time, and vice versa, you're more likely to cooperate with one another. In short-term games, people are often tempted to make themselves rich by taking advantage of others, since they don't expect to see them again. There's no direct consequence for being selfish in a short-term game. However, in a long-term game, everyone realizes that the best strategy is to make each other rich. This encourages everyone to be ethical and high integrity because they want to stay in the game. To make this model work, you must carefully choose your environment or industry. If you keep switching jobs or moving industries, you reset your progress, and you have to start building your network and your reputation from scratch. Compounding works best when you find a group of high integrity, long-term people and stay with them for a long time. Over time, your character and reputation become your most valuable assets. Eventually, you may even become a market hub where people seek you out to do deals simply because they know you are trustworthy. Remember, the biggest rewards in life are backloaded, meaning that they come at the very end of the compounding cycle. While it may feel like much of your daily effort is not showing immediate results, once you find the relationships or the projects that really matter, you should go all in. By playing iterated games with a long-term mindset, the steady accumulation of trust and experience turn ordinary efforts into extraordinary results. This is true of ideas too. Compounding in the intellectual domain means that each new idea gives the brain a better way to understand and connect old ideas. By becoming a learning machine, you can ensure that you are always prepared to take advantage of new trends that society hasn't even discovered yet. In the 1st century after Christ, Jewish scholars and religious leaders issued an ordinance requiring all Jewish fathers to send their sons to primary school, starting at like age 6 or 7. They learned to read and study the Torah in Hebrew. At the time, this was kind of a unique thing that didn't really exist in other cultures. Now, following this new rule was initially a sacrifice with no economic return. The Jewish people were primarily living in farming economies where literacy was not really required for daily work. The only immediate benefit was spiritual satisfaction. Learning to read also helps people learn to write. It also helps develop the ability to work with numbers, and later on the ability to compute prices, costs, and interest rates. Therefore, literacy creates opportunities. Jewish people did not have to be farmers anymore, a profession with less earning potential than those other options available in the growing urban areas. Not only does literacy give you a competitive edge to be a moneylender or a merchant, but it also raises productivity. So over centuries, this cultural commitment to literacy compounded and eventually gave the Jewish people a massive comparative advantage when the world economy shifted. This story illustrates that you should invest in things that provide immediate benefit now, even if you can't anticipate the future opportunities that investment might yield. The early Jewish community could not have planned for this shift to urban skilled economies, but because they had already compounded their literacy for generations, they were perfectly positioned to capitalize on that change when it arrived. We live in highly complex societies where everything is interacting with everything else, making it fundamentally impossible to predict the future. Charlie Munger's philosophy on the rule of non-interruption is built on the fundamental belief that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world, and that the most vital step in harnessing it is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. He argued that understanding both the power of compounding and the extreme difficulty of actually letting it work is at the heart and soul of understanding many things about life. This principle applies not just to money, but to the accumulation of wisdom, reputation, and trust. The psychological engine behind this rule is what Munger calls the inconsistency avoidance tendency, which describes the human brain's natural drive to stay consistent with past beliefs. This is also called the consistency bias. He says that the mind is reluctant to change once it has reached a conclusion, making it much easier to prevent a bad habit than to change one already in motion. The famous quote is, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." Now, because compounding is nonlinear and most of the massive gains only appear at the end of a long timeline, any interruption in this process resets the clock and destroys any momentum you had. In the world of investing, Munger practiced this through what he called sit on your ass investing, which involves finding a few great companies and holding them for a very long time without making any changes or decisions. In his book, Poor Charlie's Almanac, he explains that these small interruptions create a massive difference in the final fortune. Munger believed that a successful career requires only a handful of great decisions, provided that one has the character to sit there and the patience to wait for what he calls the fat pitch, without acting for the sake of acting. Now, beyond finance, Munger applied the rule of non-interruption to personal character and reputation. He stressed that reliability is essential for progress in life, and that a reputation is earned over years but can be destroyed in minutes. A good reputation compounds over decades, making it worth thousands of times more than just raw talent. Being unreliable or taking the short-term path acts as a counterbalance to all those other virtues. Ultimately, Munger taught us that the path to extraordinary success is to take a simple, basic idea and take it very seriously for a long time. He talked about slugging it out 1 inch at a time, day by day, and being consistently not stupid. Those are his words. By maintaining undisturbed continuity in learning, in investing, and in your ethics, Munger believed that if you live long enough, you will eventually get out of life exactly what you deserve. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.